Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot, and today we're going to look at the Flybywire A32NX mod version 0.5. It's finally been released. It's the latest stable version of the mod. It is fantastic. It's a really big one with lots of great new updates. We're going to look at those on the ground and in flight and see what they mean for us as pilots in Flight Simulator. As always, I am a real-world Airbus pilot, but none of this is for any use in the real world. It's just to give you some extra context on your home simulations. As ever in these sorts of videos, when I talk about the mod, if I see anything that isn't quite right, I'm not criticizing. The team have done a fantastic job and this is a really amazing mod at this point, and all I'm doing is just noticing things that are slightly different. Often the team are already working on the fix for most things I find in these videos anyway. We're going to do this on a flight from Palma to Barcelona in Spain, and it's a short flight just to give us a chance to look through a bit of the setup and a bit of the in-flight things. For our video today, unusually I will not set up a flight plan in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I normally do, but this time we're going to look at how we can use SimBrief to get ourselves a flight plan loaded in. Now this isn't a requirement of this new mod, this is just something you can use. A lot of people use SimBrief, which is a website that allows you to plan flights, and I'll show you how we can have that added in. So I'm going to load up at gate 1, set as departure. That's what I'm going to do with the A320 Flybywire Neo mod loaded. We're going to fly from Palma to Barcelona, which is a short flight up the road, just to allow me to demonstrate some of these new features. And we'll select fly. So here we are on the flight deck. Before we get started, I will just say that I will not run through a full cold and dark setup because I've got a video out on that if you'd like a tutorial on how to set up this plane cold and dark. But what I am going to do is just show you some of the great new features they've added in. So a few things we would do: turn on the batteries, of course. You'd obviously have checked a few other things are in the right place. Those are on. Get the external power on, and now we have an aeroplane which is powering up. Now, first of all, you'll notice, hooray, look at this, Q and H selected automatically, not having to constantly argue with this button to get it to swap between the two things, because it's easy like this, but when you're sat like this and the plane's moving, when you just load in, it's a nightmare for me. But now I've got it automatically set to Q and H whenever I load up the Airbus, which is a great feature they've added. So in the MCDU, I'm just going to show you how to get to that. It says selected system because they've added in a few more systems now in the MCDU menu. What this is talking about is this MCDU is just this box. This is how we talk to the Airbus. The FMGC is the guidance system of the Airbus, so that is what we use for our routing and our calculations and so on. But it can also, this box, this MCDU or MACDU, can be used to contact these other systems in the aircraft. So I'm going to go to Options, and then I can go to FMGC, and you'll see Default Baro HPA. Now if you're in America, of course, it was fine on inches, but for me in Europe, it's much better to have it always at HPA and obviously kilograms over here. I've talked about a few of these other changes in the MCDU in my MCDU update video, so I'll provide a link to that as well, and you can see that I don't want to spend too much time dealing with all of them. So let's have a look at how we can get SimBrief into our Flybywire Airbus. So before we can do that, we need to actually set it up in SimBrief itself. So hopefully on the screen you'll see now a few images, and what we've got first is going to be if you log into SimBrief, and I'll provide the link in the description, then you can generate a flight plan as you can see on the screen. You put in your airline code as such and your flight number, your departure, airport and arrival. It will automatically generate an alternate, the date and the time you want to depart, that sort of thing. You can then choose the airplane and aircraft type and load in the climb profile and so on. So all of these things, I won't do a full SimBrief tutorial. There are quite a few out there, but if you've created an account, then you go to create new flight or dispatch, then you can load in this sort of information. And eventually you can click at the top left, generate OFP. Once it loads, you will get a screen like this, which has generated OFP, where it's taken into account the routings and so on, and it's provided a flight plan. It's very similar to what Microsoft Flight Simulator does itself, but it is a bit more flexible. You can use it for a lot of things. Once you've done that and you have this generated OFP, that's all you need to do. You can then leave it there. If you scroll down, you'll see this page, which shows you more of an airline style printout of the flight plan. That's typically something similar to what pilots would get. Airlines have all different versions of that. And you can actually choose the different version of format you want printed out by SimBrief. It's quite clever. But anyway, there we go. Now back into the simulator. I'm going to go into the MCDU. Then I'm going to go into options, AOC, SimBrief, and now I'm going to enter the username I have for my SimBrief account. So I put in 320 SimPilot, my username in there. Once I've entered that, that's all I need to do. Now I can go return, back to the MCDU menu, and now let's select FMGC. That's what we actually want. FMGC. I'm going to clear that GPS primary loss message. It would say that until we've aligned the IRSs, which is great. I mean, I should point out so many of these features are correct and have been added in really well by the Fly-by-Wire team. But there we go. So now if I go to data, I can check the aircraft status is all good on there. And now we'll go to init. And then you'll see this init request box. So normally this will talk to the company's ACARS systems and download it. But what this is going to do is load it in from SimBrief. So I'm going to do init request, uplink inserted in progress. Insert in progress. And there you go. Clear that message. AOC ACT flight plan uplink. Great. And now you can see it's even got the alternate, it's got the flight number, it's got a cost index, a cruising flight level. It's fantastic. And it's loaded in the routes. So here we are in Palma to Barcelona. If I go to flight plan, it's loaded that in. I still need to select my departure and arrival because that was not loaded in, which is not going to be loaded in by the SimBrief because that's not what it does in real life. You have to choose your departure and arrival. It just loads the route. It's a short route today, so it wouldn't have taken us long to type it in anyway. But there you go. Now we have that feature, which is really great. You'll notice our weights are sort of left blank, which is correct for the real aircraft. I've talked about how they've updated this. This is the Init B page. So you go to Init and then you put the arrow across and you're in the Init B, it's called, because this would be Init A, this page. So this is a great feature. We can go to MCDU menu, ATSU, AOC, and in AOC, this is where we talk to the company pretty much. So you can go to your init page and you can see it's got our planned flight, so the flight number, the route, the destination, how much fuel we have on board, estimated time en route, 32 minutes. And there's another page here. So they've added loads of great details in here, landing pilot and sort of things, which is great. I won't talk too much about that today because I think there's a whole other video in that alone. But what we can do, which is really great, is go to perf, weight and balance. And I've got block fuel, taxi fuel, trip fuel. And then if I press the arrow, page 2. If you look up on the top right, you'll see 1 out of 2. So always look up there to see if there's another page you can get to with the arrows. And there we go, page 2 out of 2. And we can select the payload, forward baggage, rear baggage, the CG, number of passengers. So this is a heavy aeroplane by the looks of it there. And what I can do is, if I bring up my SimBrief flight plan again, I can see that my zero fuel weight should, my fuel on board for this flight needs to be, I need a minimum of 5 tons. And you can see it's loaded that in actually. Which I think it took from SimBrief, but I need to actually press load. So press refuel load, and now it wasn't 9, now it's down to 5 tons. A bit low actually. And 1477 trip. Yeah, so these figures are loaded in from SimBrief, so I just have to press refuel down there. And you can do the OFP, which is operational flight plan request send in there, which I think would populate this, but I'm not entirely sure. Then I go to payload, and you can see it's got these figures here, which I thought I set to kilograms, but obviously I haven't because these numbers are far too... Well, I have set it to kilograms, but these appear to be in pounds anyway. So I'm going to do load like that. And we're at 63 tons, which was... it gives us a zero fuel weight 58.1. So I need a zero fuel weight of about 60.9 according to my flight plan. I wonder if I type that in. Can't type that in. So I could load it up the payload. Let's put it to 20,000 pounds, about 10 tons payload. There we go. It gives us a zero fuel weight of 61 tons. So that's a bit closer to what I was expecting. And now I do load, and you'll see this number. There you go, 66 tons takeoff. So this seems to be a pounds figure more than a kilograms figure, just for your information. But this is in kilograms, which is good. So there we go. So now, all through the MCDU, we can load up, looking at our SimBrief flight plan, we can load up our figures, our fuel. It's great, really great stuff. So very impressed with that. Right, back to FMGC. By the way, in the real aircraft, and I'll see if it works here, you don't have to go MCDU menu FMGC every time, because you'll see that if I go to, let's go to the ATSU AOC, but then I just press flight plan, it goes back to the flight plan, because this is the most important stuff. So the proper way is MCDU FMGC, but you can just press these buttons and it will also take you there straight away, as you would hope. Finally then, now we've loaded up our weights and so on, I can go back to our Init B page and enter the zero fuel weight of 61, max zero fuel weight of 30, block fuel 5, and now it gives us our takeoff weight 65.8. Alternate, it needs about 1 ton to get back here, which sounds about right. Final reserve and so on. I've talked about this in my MCDU update video, but there we go. Great. So I've also loaded in a departure from 24 right here at Palma. We're going to turn on those flight directors and let's make sure we have the correct QNH, which we do. Next then, the performance figures. They have been updated. Let me just see. Yeah, we do have a departure. Good. So I've got, as I said, MCDU full setup video as well, which takes you through the routine. DIFSRIP, the acronym, data, init A, flight plan, secondary flight plan, RADNAV, which has also been updated, Init B, which we've just completed, very important, finally performance. Now we have a few extra features in here. They've updated the calculations on these speeds, so you should be presented with a screen like this. What I'm going to do is, I don't want takeoff shift, that's only if we are taking off from an intersection, so not the full length of the runway, but also you don't have to do it anyway. Flaps / trimmable horizontal stabilizer. Well, I don't care about the THS figure in here, I'm just going to put in the flap figure. So I'm going to take off flaps 1, so put in the 1. We can take off flap 1, flap 2, or flap 3. Flex to temperature, I've talked about this. I'm going to do a video on flex temperature at some point in the future, but 20 degrees is too low, it's not realistic. I'm going to put in 58 degrees. The higher the temperature, the lower the thrust for takeoff. I'm not sure this is properly implemented yet anyway, but anyway, 20 degrees is too low. Engine out acceleration, these are all set to 1500 feet. Sorry, the thrust reduction and acceleration are automatically set to 1500 feet above the airport, so you can see we're about 20 feet up, so that's about 1520 almost. Next, to get our speeds here, in real life you'd have a calculator of some variety, whether it's on an iPad or through ACARS or whatever you use. What I can do here is select the key and then press it again. Select and then press. And you'll see this V1, VR, V2, disagree. This is a realistic message you would get. You wouldn't get it like this because when you haven't entered all of the figures, it won't actually complain quite as much. But either way, it's a good message to have to warn you that the speeds aren't right, because our V1 cannot be higher than our VR. So things like that. And V2, 137. So these have been calculated. They've got a great system for calculating these. I think it's much more realistic. If I change the flap setting, flaps 2, and then I have to recalculate the speeds, because the more flap you have, the lower these speeds will be typically. There we go, 132 instead of 137. So that's great. So we now have a way to load it up. So there we go. We have our takeoff performance loaded. So looking pretty good. Once again, let's enjoy some of the new sound effects added in. So I'm going to stop talking and we can enjoy engine startup from the outside. Just while we push back, we'll start engine number 1. And something of note is that this page has just improved so much now that we've got the inline valve as the air gets pumped into the engine that turns N2 up here, and then that will do that for a while before we see the fuel flow get added, and then the igniting system start up, either system A or B, one at a time. So there's system B in use. We should see fuel flow. There it is, and then EGT should ignite. So amazing. Let's get pushed back. Beacon should be on already, actually. So yeah, like I said, they've done a fantastic job. This startup sequence has just been improved so much from the original, and they keep changing it to make it more and more realistic. So this is, it's really great. I can't believe the amount of things we've seen added here, even in this update actually. Here we are taxiing out to the departure runway, and something I've noticed that I'm not sure if it's been modified, but it certainly feels like it does, is that now I'm at idle thrust, so those thrust levers are back at idle, and the aeroplane is continuing to roll along at sort of 23, 24. It's actually slightly accelerating. You can just see down here. And that is really great. That's realistic. It does accelerate. So I talk about it in my taxi tutorial, the braking technique for doing that, but that is absolutely correct. So it's great they've added that in, because previously it took loads of thrust to get this airplane taxiing, which was just not realistic. So we're getting ready now to take off from 24 right in Palma. What we're going to do is put that to arc, and I want to just show you a couple of other features they've added for the takeoff. So they've changed the flight model. The handling of the aircraft and the rudder should be more realistic for crosswind landings. That's something that time will tell. We'll try that in some crosswind landings and so on in the future. I want to do some more landing videos as well, but hopefully it will feel a bit more realistic on takeoff. Another thing they've added, which was missing, was the rotate indication on the PFD speed tape. On the speed tape you can see V1 is 127 and V2 is 132. If we look down on the MCDU, we can see 127, 132, but VR is 128. It's not shown on those numbers, and that's correct. It's actually shown by a little dot on the speed tape, a little ball. So that was missing, and now it should have been added in. So we're going to see that on takeoff. As we are on the runway, we should have already turned these lights on. So we've got the strobe lights on, the beacon on, the landing lights on, runway turn off on, nose light to take off, and nav and logo lights on. Wing lights aren't so important. They've updated the lighting system both internally and externally. So what I'm going to do is turn on all the interior lights, so the overhead panel. Then I put the integral lights on the lower panel. Won't have the floodlight, don't use that one almost ever. PFDs are turned up, and let's just change the time of day, make it a bit darker. So we can see the work they've done there. So look at that, fantastic lighting on the interior. We've got reflections of these screens. They seem to have reduced the amount of glow from the screens, which were previously lighting up the flight deck quite a lot. That seems to be pretty much gone at the moment. Dome light can go to dim, and now we can see all around, and the overhead panel is lit up, so that's a great improvement, because previously this would be too dark. So that is really nice to see. Yeah, that's much more like it, and how it would come across in real life. Also, let's go externally, and now we can see the whole new improved lighting system out here. Again, amazing job. Got our nav lights, and I have a whole video on the lights if you need any information on them, about when we use them, what they're for, and how to use them basically. But look at that, look at the reflections in the fuselage. It's looking amazing now, really amazing. Great, so let's put it back to a bit more daylight for our departure. So what we're expecting to see on the PFD, it might be quite hard to see. I'll try and do a bit of a zoomed in takeoff, but it won't look so great for you guys. But yeah, we're going to see the little round dot for the rotate call. Okay, let's go. So time for takeoff. Hold it on the toe brakes, 50% M1, let it stabilize. And now release the brakes. 2 clicks forward, not more. Oh, there you go, man flex 58, SRS runway, auto thrust is armed and blue. Should have the side stick half down by this point. And away we go. Certainly having a big impact on my frame rate though. Okay, 80 to 100 knots, release that to neutral. And now you can see the V1 and then a little blue circle showing us rotate, which is great. New sound effects as well. V1 rotate, up we go. Positive climb, gear up, and you hear that rattling of the nose wheel. That's pretty realistic. It's when the nose wheel gets lifted off the ground, sometimes it can rattle if it's not aligned quite well or it's a bit uneven. And there we go. We've talked about it in my takeoff tutorial video, so I have a video on that as well if you'd like to know what's going on the takeoff and some of the things we're doing here. We are now in the cruise for our short flight over to Barcelona, as you can see there, only about 60 miles away, so not long until we descend. The MCDU brings up this message, enter dest data. It's asking that because if I go to perf, I can clear out that message, and then next phase for approach, it's missing weather, the QNH, the temperature, the wind, and so on. Now, I have talked about this again in the MCDU update video, but I can now get that weather inside of the Airbus without having to use the Microsoft Flight Simulator. If I go MCDU, ATSU, AOC, and then I can go to weather request. Okay, weather request. I want a METAR 4, and I'm landing in. It's going to give me the departure and arrival, so I'll just send that. So I've got Palma and Barcelona. So you press send, then we should eventually see company message appear up here. We can turn those seatbelt signs off now, actually. Something to note is that you must set it up properly, so please do watch my video on that, on the MCDU update for Fly-by-Wire, in order to make sure you have this set up for your use. So the METAR is the current weather. I can change it to TAF, which is a forecast. Not very useful to us now because we're almost there. So now that says company message, it's arrived. In the real aircraft, often that would print straight out of the printer down here. But what we can do is we go to return to AOC, and then we can go received messages. METAR. So there is LEPA, which is our departure. We want LEPL, our arrival. So you're going to have to take a note of this. Like I say, in the real aircraft, we could just print it out. So take a note of what we've got. But as you can see, we have temperature 14 degrees, dew points 13. We're not going to enter that. QNH is 1024. No SIG, so there's nothing significant they want to tell us. Broken 400, so pretty low cloud base. We don't have to tell the MCDU that, but we do need the wind, 320 at 5 knots. So the wind is there. 8,000 meters visibility is what that's saying. This is the issue time, so the 18th at 10:30 Zulu. Okay, so if I go back to performance, next phase, QNH then we said was 1024. Temperature is 14. Wind 320 at 5. So there we go. The minima we get from our chart, which I've shown before in other videos. So if we go to Navigraph, we can find the minima that we need. So I'm not sure what it is. I'm going to put in something a bit ridiculous. Let's put in 400 MDA for now. And transition altitude, it's actually going to be a transition level in the descent, and that will be on the ATIS. We don't have an ATIS here because we're not on VATSIM. ATIS is the broadcast by the airport. It tells you the runway and use, that sort of thing. Next, we can look around and we can see some updated textures and images on the PFD. So this looks better than ever. So they've just refined loads of different things. I'm not entirely sure all the different features now, but every time I load up this mod, it seems to look better and better. So this has been refined again. So it's looking really good now. Same for the navigation display and the engine warning display. I've already talked about this status display down here, where we've seen, such as the engine startup, all the processes are looking a lot more normal now, which is really great. Some extra ECAM pages have been added, so we now have a condition page, shows us the air going in. So this is the air being pumped into the cabin, and then that's the actual temperature in the cabin up there. So I don't know if this works now. If I, for example, was to turn up the forward cabin, turn down the cockpit, let's see if those temperatures change. So I'd expect this duct temperature to go down and this one to go up, which it has. Yeah, it's pumping in hot air into the back, cooler air into the front. And if we swap those around, let's have it warmer in the flight deck, colder in the cabin. And we go down, and there we go, hot air going in. It's not usually that quick to change, but it is working, and now we can see the temperature changing. So that's really great. They're just adding so much. We've also got cabin pressurization page. This is a really important page. It shows us that the vertical speed in the cabin is 0. Landing elevation auto, so it should know the elevation of Barcelona, but it says minus 2,000 feet, so that's not quite right. It would actually show you the actual elevation of the airport. And then the cabin altitude is not at 0 feet. So I think this isn't quite functioning yet, but it's on the way. Finally, if I press on one of these pages, like for example engine, I can have a look. And what we do at the top of climb is we look through all of these pages. So I can do that now. I'm not sure what it's doing to the speed. It seems to really be struggling. There seems to be a bit of a glitch. So let's go to selected speed, because that's a bit annoying to hear it constantly revving up and down. There we go, 270 knots. Right, so now you can press all and it will cycle along each of these systems pages. And that's the button I would use in real life to look through these. It's much easier than selecting each one. And you can see now, I think the electric page is shown, but it's not really modelled. For example, generator 1 is actually online. But there we go. Hydraulics still missing. Fuel page is working though, which is great. APU page works. Condition page works. Doors work. It's fantastic. So yeah, so now you can press all to cycle through those. If I go to the default camera position, so just to prove it, I'll do that. You can see it's now a bit higher up as well. So I can keep the screens here and I can see down over the front, whereas before it was really a bit too low down. So that's a much better job. Just before we start our descent, you can see here it wants to be above 8,500 feet at USR, plus 8,500. At PL546 it wants to be at 8,500. It's not a plus, it just is at. So if I was cleared by traffic control to fly the full arrival, I could do that in what's called managed descent. So instead of me selecting an altitude, for example 8,500 feet, and then doing an open descent or a vertical speed descent, I can actually push it away and it will go into DES mode, and then it will level off and it will go magenta. These altitudes will be armed in magenta on the altimeter to tell me that it's going to follow these constraints. If I did open descent, it wouldn't work. So that's been modeled apparently. It's a bit tricky to work out exactly which airports that's going to work at, because a lot of the coding is a bit messed up in the way these arrivals are loaded into the sim, so I'm not entirely sure if we'll see that working today. One more feature then that I do want to show you is the G meter they've added, which is down here. Now I've never seen this on the real aircraft, I hope not to, but if I disconnect the autopilot, turn off those flight directors, and now I've done a bit about this in my normal or my Airbus videos right at the start when this came out, but if I go to, let's go to a lot of bank and start pulling, we should see the G-force appear down here on the bottom of the status display. So I'll keep pulling. There it is, there's the G-load, 1.9. It's limited to 2.5 when we're clean, and 2 when we are with flap out. So there you go. It's modelled. It only appears when you're putting a significant amount of G, so that's why I've never seen it in real life, thank goodness. And like I said, I hope not to. And then it disappears, pull the other way, and G-load. Yeah, very good. I think this is the first Airbus add-on I've seen where that's modelled for a long time anyway. So quite impressed with that. Yeah. Right, let's get back onto our arrival. We are now in our descent to Barcelona, and I'm curious to see how the flight model has changed on the approach. We are expecting to have the flight model updated, so I'm hoping there'll be a little less drag, the nose attitude on final approach will be a little lower, and we'll also see it respond correctly to the targeting approach speeds as we put out the flap. So when I activate the approach phase in the MCDU, and then I start putting out flaps, it should decelerate to the S speed and then the F speed. Though they were calculated incorrectly before, so I'll be interested to see what's been changed. Okay, so we've given ourselves a shortcut to Bravo Lima 517 at 6,000 feet, and then we're going to join the ILS from there. So if I go to Performance, Activate Approach Phase, Confirm, now I should see it target green dot speed here. So let's see if it does that. Whilst I'm here, I'm going to just see if this page works yet. Lima Echo Bravo Lima. No, I really hope they get that working. I use that every day, where you can type in the airport and you can even put the runway and it will give you the distance to go. Very useful, but still, hopefully one day that gets added. So now it should target green dots, even though it's in the descent, so that's good. It looks like it is. It's taking the thrust off. We're going to have low auto brake for this landing. And now we're below our flap limiting speed for flap 1. Oh, no, don't do that. There we go. So let's put out flap to 1, and I should see that speed target go from green dots. Well, let's see what happens actually while we're level. Because as you can see, we're 18 miles out. Oh, there we go, it's in descent mode. It's going to carve through it. It shouldn't do that. I have out blue armed and it's set there. It should have definitely leveled off, but there we go. It's going to keep descending. Not sure why it's gone to out star. So let's put that down now to the next altitude of 3,000 feet anyway. 3,000. So I started open descent. Now I'm below that speed. In fact, let's do it in vertical speed. Vertical speed 800. So I don't want to be joining the ILS clean. As you can see, we pretty much are clean. So I'm going to wind the vertical speed up 400 feet per minute. And let's put out flap 1. Flaps to 1. And now it should target S. So that's a pretty reasonable S speed. These calculations are a little off in the default Airbus. I'm actually going to put the gear down now because we're below 250 knots. And again, we're a bit high. I'm going to point it back in towards the ILS. Arm the approach. So let's set a vertical speed high enough that we will actually be able to capture. Get down to that glide slope. So 1600, there's lock star, that's worked. So this is actually a glide slope capture from above. I have a video on that on my channel. I won't spend too much time talking about it today because we're going to capture it in advance anyway. So there we go. Once it reaches the S, we'll see it start to spool up the engines, which it is because it's targeting green S speed. Now flap 2, I can put out. I'm below the next limit speed. Flap 2 is where we get most of our drag because the flaps come out the back of the wing. Surprised it's not capturing that glide slope. We shall see what happens there. And now it should target F, and that's a much more realistic F. Before they were all over the place. So the flap 2 F speed is usually very low. It's pretty close to the V approach. So yeah, pretty good. There we go. Speed, glide slope, lock, cat 3 single. If I put on the, we still can't do 2 autopilots, but there we go. So that's much better. So we can see that the flap 2 F speed and then flap 3 is going to be a little bit slower. And flap full, it should get rid of the F, and now it will target VAP. So there it goes. So fantastic. They've done a great job. Speeds on the approach are better. So let's get ourselves fully configured and then see what the actual final approach attitude looks like compared to normal. I'm expecting just a couple of degrees pitch up. So here we go, final approach now, and look at that. I'm thinking 2.5 degrees, something like that pitch. So looks like it's working out about where I would expect it to be. On speed, it shouldn't go to outstar though, not once it's in glide slope mode. So let's wind that up out the way. Let's press that again. There we go, glide slope. That's not how you do it in the real aircraft, but to do that all I did was disengage and then rearmed approach. Okay, so yeah, much better handling. By the looks of things, they've sorted out the flight model, which is really impressive. I was concerned that wouldn't be possible. Next, we're going to talk about the go around. So let's imagine our go around altitude today. Air traffic says climb to 5,000 feet. So this has now been added in, which is fantastic news. To go around in the Airbus, I am going to do a full video on it, don't worry, I will do that soon. But quickly, what I'm going to tell you is I'll put the thrust levers to toga. I'm going to leave the autopilot in for today to show you. Thrust levers will go to toga, and then I'm going to expect this to say man toga. We're going to get SRS like we do on the takeoff here, and then here it should say it will go into heading, or it would go to go around track, but that's not modeled yet. I don't think the go around navigation is enabled in the Flybywire mod. So that's what we're going to do. They've also added a go around phase into the MCDU. So let me just put in, this normally automatically fills itself actually in the real aircraft. 1500, 1500, there we go. And that is the engine out acceleration altitude. So we're not concerned about that today. That's if you're on one engine. So it will accelerate at 1500 feet and it will say leave a climb at 1500 feet, just like on takeoff. I'm going to stop at 5,000 feet. So anyway, so what I'm going to do, toga on the thrust levers, check that those modes change as we just discussed. I'm going to move the flaps in one stage, then I'm going to check I have positive climb, then I'm going to bring the gear up. And that will get us going. Then it turns into a takeoff. So we'll wait until we get lever climb, we'll bring the levers to climb, accelerate and retract the flaps. So let's give it a go. I'm excited. This is the first time this has been enabled in here. Right, so let's imagine we have to go around from here. So, thrust levers to toga, man toga SRS go around track. That is correct, that's good. Bring those flaps in one stage to flap 3. We now have positive climb, gear up, and away it goes. It only reverts to heading. There we go, through 1500 feet. It's going lever climb, bring the levers to climb, and now we're above F, so we bring the flaps to 1, because we were at 3, so if they go from 3 to 1. If they were at 2, they'd go from 2 to 1. And now we get above the S. Flaps to 0. And it should target green dot, which it does. So fantastic. They've done an amazing job on the go around. So I can definitely do a go around video in the near future. Now we only have heading mode, but that's no problem. If you want to go and fly another approach now, you can activate the approach phase again, and it should reload the same approach, which it looks like it has. And you can go and fly that RNS, just for your information. And you can see now it's targeting green dot again. So I have continued that flight after the go around, and I'm now bringing myself back around for an ILS onto 07 left again. So just the same approach as we did earlier, and we're going to do that in heading mode. This time we're going to go around again, but we're going to do a soft go around. So that has apparently been added, and I'm curious to see if it works. A soft go around is a Neo exclusive feature on the Airbus family for now anyway, and what it means is instead of going to toga like we did, we went all the way to toga. What we're going to do this time is when we decide to go around, we'll go to toga, we'll make sure that's worked and it started the go around, and then we'll bring it back to flex MCT. Then we should see soft go around shown on the PFD, and that's going to tell us that we are actually going to fly a go around at a slightly reduced rate of climb. So instead of just going full thrust and up we go, we're going to use whatever thrust we need to climb at 2,000 feet per minute. It's just a more controlled way of going around, and it means that when we reach our go around altitude, we're not climbing up so fast. The reason we might use this is because the aircraft can go around on a single engine and make the climb performance. That's what go arounds are based on. So we don't actually need full thrusts typically, only if we're on a single engine. So it's a good feature to have if you have the capacity. If you're not sure, just go to Toga, obviously for safety reasons, and if anything doesn't work or you have any sort of failure, we're going to go to Toga anyway. Right, so here we are back on final approach now. As you can see, it's all worked again. So this is the same flight as earlier. That whole go around phase worked. Put out the final stage of flap. And cool the cabin, although the cabin wouldn't have unsecured in the go around normally. They'll be ready for another approach straight away. So 5,000 feet is our go around altitude. You can see that loaded in here on the PFD. PFD looking great. It does look really good. I must say they've done a fantastic job. And let's get ourselves ready for the go around. So as I said, same again, through to Toga. Then I'm going to make sure that's worked and then pretty quickly bring it back to flex, looking for soft go around in there. Then move the flaps in a stage, positive climb, gear up. So all very similar. We'll do it from a bit lower to give ourselves a chance, because once we get through 1,500 feet, it will go into its normal accelerating mode as we saw earlier. As I said, I will do a full video on go-arounds in the future because they're just so many things to talk about. Okay, time to go around then. So let's see what happens. So we're going to go Toga and then back to flex. And there you go, man, go around soft. SRS, auto thrust. Bring in the flaps one stage, positive climb, gear up, and now I should see about 2,000 or 2,500. Oh, let's see what it does. I see, I don't think it's actually targeting the right vertical speed. That's higher than I would expect it to be. But there we go, it's got the right FMAs, so hopefully that'll get added in the near future. There we go, through our 1,500 feet to accelerate. Bring that to climb. Flaps to 1. I hope this video has been useful for you. Thank you very much for watching. That's just a few of the features they've added. There are plenty more in the changelog and on the website. Of course, the link is in the description. And as I said, this was version 0.5, the latest stable build. Do please subscribe to the channel for more videos and streams and tutorials all coming up in the near future. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again in another video soon. Bye bye.